So I guess we get going. Is this a start? Angélique Kidjo, good
Yes,
morning,
it
good
is.
afternoon, good evening.
Oh, yeah, I would say good evening because it's pretty much 7:30 here or in Paris. So 7:53, actually, as to say.
And it is almost 10 o'clock here on the West Coast. I'm in California, so we're speaking to audiences all over the globe right now. It is so
Perfect.
good. It is so good to see you again and to have this chance to chat with you. I don't know how many times we've spoken. It's been a lot, but I do very clearly remember the first time we met at the BBC World Service. I was a young producer at the Africa Service. I think we might actually be around the same age. I was born in 61, so
Yeah, well, welcome to the wagon of the 60s.
you were just about to come out with Logozo, your first
Yes,
album.
indeed.
You were doing some press for that, and you came up to do an interview at the Africa Service. And the Africa Service is always a pretty loud and boisterous place. But when you came in, it was a stick of dynamite had just gone off. It was like you even like quieted down the House of Service, and for you to quiet down the House of Service, that says a lot.
Oh my God. Well,
but
it's
um,
Africa. So when you come
but
to
it
Africa,
really kind of set the tone for kind of like how I think of you as this just dynamo artist, and just open and ready for anything. So I want to kind of like go. We're not going to do the life story, but I think there's some few kind of key moments that I want to hit on. And let's start at the beginning. I always think of people who are great musicians. They had to have been surrounded by great music, records, music in their environment. Um, what was it like growing up in Benin, and what kind of music were you hearing that kind of you think impacted you in the long run?
I think that for me, it's not only music, it's also the ability of my parents to allow us to listen to everything. Started from traditional music to the most country music you can ever heard. I mean, when once I came to America, I was one day I don't know what I was doing. I was start thinking, Blue Moon. I started singing Blue Moon of Kentucky, keep on shining. He was like, "What the hell you got?" I'm like, I grew up listening to that stuff,
Yeah.
and for me, till I left my country and become an adult, it was normal that every child that was growing up in Benin or around the world is exactly the same like me. My father and mother, they brought music, they brought theater, they brought sport, they opened the house to every single human being that could come. You need water, you get water. You need food, you get food. You need a place to sleep, you get it. And then you need to go to school. My parents say, okay, we'll find the means to get you to school. And I grew up in that kind of melting pot without questioning the exceptionality of it. And I just take it for granted. And as we're speaking here, even talking about it, the memory coming back, I'm like, how dare you take it so simply? But you could not understand that. And sometimes I'll get annoyed with my parents always telling us a human being is not a matter of color. You gotta blah, 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 blah. Every day you have a lesson. And the elderly people that I was surrounded with, my grandmothers, my uncles, my nickname was When, Why, How. I asked so much question.
When,
And
why, how?
and then when they get tired, they just throw a proverb at me. And then I scratch my head and say, what does that mean? What does that have to do with anything that I say? And they will tell you, once you figure it out, you know what it is.
I mean, you talk about the exceptionality of that, but how common was that openness in a household in Cotonou, growing up in the 60s and 70s?
Very rare. I've
Yeah.
never seen it anywhere. Every time I would go visit my friends, it's like dead silence. You don't speak up. Everything is quiet. Everybody's in is it was very conservative in the bad way because they were not allowed to speak up. And in the contrary, in my house, my father is that you don't speak up, I can't read your brain. So you have any problem, if you want help, you better speak up because we can help you. And if you don't speak up, you become a a, a, a token for people that are gonna do whatever they want to do with you. Speak up. We love you here. We won't judge you. And that's what the thing that was really, 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 really important for me. That my parent will never judge. When you do something bad and you come back home and you're hurt, they're gonna fix it. They're gonna find the way to help you figure it out how you fix it yourself. But never judge you telling you Why don't you think about it? Didn't I tell you before? It has never been a game of blaming or guilt. My father from the get-go said there's never gonna be guilt in my house. You do something wrong, apologize. The person
Mm.
who want to accept your apology is no longer your business. Just move on.
Yeah, that does strike me as really exceptional, especially considering kind of the authoritarian political and climate in Benin and a lot of surrounding African countries at the time. I understand that the Kidjo household was renowned for Saturday night dance parties.
Yes. Oh boy.
Well,
That's
it almost sounds like your house was an oasis.
absolutely. Even though even during the dictatorship at one point, we would play the music that we wanted, and people that knows will come to the house. And because of the clout of my father, probably my father refused every time a government would come in and they would call him to be part of the government. He always said to them graciously, "I'm not a politician. I'm a postman. I don't know nothing about politics. I can't help you. Why should I waste your time and my time being a dead wood on your desk?" And I think that somehow have protected us. But we used to do it more when I was a teenager till I turned 12. And then it becomes more like once here and there. But music, we will listen to it now with headphones when during the party, because music from around the world was banned by the dictatorship. Even the traditional music was all it becomes an underground thing. So party becomes an underground thing. So it was for me, it adds some fun to it without missing the gravity of it, the danger of it at that time. And somehow, what really was the trauma for me was the ability that I could not speak openly and freely in the courtyard of the house.
Mm.
Anyone that comes in becomes a potential enemy. That is dictatorship. They don't need to build, especially jail cell for you. They start jailing you in your home, and then you say something and somebody take it out of context, you might end up in jail. So it was really hard for me coming from very liberal parents that tell us um, there was never going to be a taboo subject home at the exception of racism, anti-Semitism, and xenophobia. They didn't have the house for that. My father said, "I don't have room in my heart, in my home, in my head for anyone that would come here and start vomiting hatred. I don't have it." So and that stays with me also as I was growing up. And I stay away from people that you can't talk to that are already in the mindset set to hate somebody without knowing the person. So I will try, and if I can, then I move on.
That helps me understand so much your parents' background, that kind of exceptional background. Um, I can't help but imagine that that had a lot to do with your uh, your own kind of like self-awareness and ability to become a musician, to do something really extraordinary that nobody else really was thinking about, probably.
My parents, they never stopped me from doing music. My father produced my first concert when I did my first album. The local promoter was supposed to produce the show, and he had the musician. He paid the musician. And 2 weeks before my concert in Togo, he came home and told my dad, "Frank, I love your daughter. She sings good, very good, but she's too little. Nobody gonna see her on stage. So why should I invest on her?" And my father replied to him at that time was, "Did you hear yourself sounding so stupid? I can't do the same thing." And then my father at that time was retired. And then he said, "I'll prove to you the talent has no size. I'm gonna produce this show." So it become a decision that the whole family have to take, because if the pension of my father come every 3 months. So my father said the next 3 months they're gonna come in, we're gonna just eat bread and drink tea. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Are we ready for this? And everybody vote on that. And so we have to prove to this guy how stupid he is. So my father produced my first concert. He had to retract all the rest of the posters. And for days we sat down. He will write the date and write the prices. I still have the copy of the billboard of that show. Many people didn't come because he didn't have any connection to radios or
Mhm.
TV, but he did it anyway. That's what launched my career for me to be here today, to be speaking to you. My mom helped me manage my voice, dress. My brother Oscar played the guitar, will help me find chords for my. It was a family affair, and my father will film my concert and telling me, I'm gonna leave you 1 week for you to come down from your cloud nine, and then we're gonna sit down and watch these super 8 millimeters of film that I have, and we're gonna tell you the truth. It can be painful, but you got to stomach
Mm.
it, because for you to be better at what you do, you have to be your first worst critic, and you have to doubt and question yourself all the time. So I grew up with that. The first time it was painful. I would cry and I would cry, and my father would come to me and say, "Don't cry. What we tell you, is it wrong? You listen to us. You saw what we saw. If we didn't tell you, will you be happy?" And then I realized that it was an act of love.
Yeah.
And tell me, you can't be out there and shame yourself. You have to represent yourself and beyond.
Wow, that is serious parental support. Um, I want to put a pin in that moment and that concert, that first concert that you performed back in your home of Benin. We'll come back to that in a moment. But I just want to ask you first, can you just describe the moment where you realized, all right, music, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to do it until I can't do it anymore. And, I'm going to succeed. What was that moment?
I think the moment came when I left. My parents has sacrificed a lot for me to live. They were not rich. My father was already retired, as I said, and it took them a year to put the money aside to buy my plane ticket. And
He was a postman, you said.
yeah, he retired from the
Mm,
post office.
mm,
And the last image of my dad that I have was him behind the wheel weeping, asking
mhm.
himself, "Am I making the right decision to let you go? What if you are caught and sent to jail? I will never forgive myself."
And you were en route to Paris, right?
And I turned around and said to my dad, "I'm 23. You can't be responsible for my life. Whatever happened, I will never hold that against you. Let me go, because if I stay here, one day I'm going to open my mouth, because you taught me to be free and to speak freely, and I can't stay here." So he dropped me far from the entrance of the airport, and I managed to leave. And when I arrived in Paris, I knew what was bestowed upon me, that I have to choose whatever I want to do. Or I will study to become a surgeon, or I would study to be a human rights lawyer, or I have three choices. As my mom and dad say, have plan A, B, and C, and D if you have to. So I managed. Some of my friends were studying law in a university, because I arrived too late in this month of September. I arrived September 11, 1983, and it was too late for me to register in any school. So they said to me, "Why don't you come for a trimester and see if next year you still want, if you still want to do a law, do to be a lawyer?" And I was lucky enough to tag along with them without being registered in the university. And they were an interesting law teacher. He teach law, criminal law, business law, all of it in one. And then he would pick one day out of randomly and say, "Okay, let's speak about what it means to be a lawyer. What do you want to achieve with being a lawyer? What it means to be a lawyer or a magistrate or a prosecutor? All those things, you guys have to understand the responsibility and the the duty that you as a lawyer have to defend a human life." So one day, I don't know why I raised my hand, and then he said, "Yes, Miss, what do you want to do with law?" I said, "First of all, I wanted to be a human rights lawyer." And then he looked at me and said, "That's the first time I've heard this in this room. But you have to understand that in order for you to be a great human rights lawyer, you have to study political science." I said, "Huh? No, 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 no. I don't do politics." And then he said, "Well, how are you gonna be a human rights lawyer without doing politics?" And then I said, "Is it compulsory? Is it mandatory?" He said, "Yeah." And then I said, "Can I go around it?" He goes, "No." And I said, "Okay, how do I do this then?" He said, "Let me pose you I'll put a situation in front of you. Let's say today, as we're speaking, you are a human rights lawyer defending somebody. You have the proof that the person is innocent. In your gut, you know you have your defense line, and you know that this person has done nothing wrong, but the country he comes from is the one that messed up. And because of the outcry, that person have to take the blame. And I look at him and say, if he's a president, if he's a minister, whatever it is, the person comes to my court. And then he look at me and say, no, that doesn't work like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. And from that moment on, I said to myself, well, if I sing, I can do the same thing, but differently.
And it's ironic too, because in a way you have become very political,
Unfortunately.
despite the fact that you wanted to stay away from it. And let me just add that if you had become a human rights lawyer or an attorney, I would not want to be the prosecutor tangling with you.
Oh, I'll whoop your butt.
I would, and personally, I would have your number like quick dial, speed dial, in case I got into trouble.
You have to prove you're innocent. You don't want to be sitting in the court with me. I'll tell you that.
So it's also in Paris where you met your husband, Jean,
Yes.
and you got married. I'm going to fast forward now to 1990 and back to that first concert in Benin. This is your first time performing there. As you said, you had just performed in Togo, but I mean, Benin, Togo was kind of like, and still is stuck in this kind of authoritarian situation. Benin was making at the time in 1990 this slow transition to democracy,
Absolutely.
and the former dictator Mati Keraku would eventually be elected as president. But you arrive with this whole political upheaval very much in the foreground. Take the story from there. What were you feeling as you kind of got ready to do this first concert, and
Oof.
people in Benin knew who you were at this point, vedette internationale, and all that, and but in the foreground is all this political upheaval.
Yeah, but the thing that was really interesting for me was a lot of emotion. Because when I left, I never thought that I could come back one day and play in the stadium in my country. And here I am with a lot of threat, of course. There were threat that this is going to happen to me. My parents were all panicking. I said to my dad, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm going to sing and I'm going to leave.
But talk more about those threats. What was the threat? What were you feeling?
The threat
What
was people that think that because I left the country and didn't suffer as much as they suffer, that I shouldn't be here singing. That if I come to sing, then they're going to kill me. And I said to my dad, okay, if this is the last concert I'm going to do, let me sing them to sleep. And my dad said, okay. So during that concert, I'm still really seeing my father really in front. My mom is sitting next on his left, my brother on his right. And my father was frozen. He just crossed his arm like that. And the whole show didn't clap. And I can see the fear and the admiration in his eyes.
So you saw both concern that something would happen, but also pride.
Yes, both. And then the next morning, I went home to see my parents. My mom, as usual, was already doing cooking and being happy. My father was still sitting in the living room. I'm like, Dad, what's up? He looked at me and shook his head. I said, Dad, what's up? Come on, answer. And then he looked at me and he said, what you have become is what I have foreseen.
Whoa.
And you don't understand the power that you exude and give back and take back from people. I sat there and see why people want you gone. You gotta be careful. You were born with this. I've seen this since you was a kid. You sung before you spoke. And I'm telling you, there will be problem. There will be hard on your way because when you come somewhere, you come with your heart open to everybody. And you bring a light that people don't want to be in. People like shadows. People like dark places where they can lick their wound and nurture their hate. There's none of that in you. So you gotta be careful. I said, Dad, you taught me that. What you're saying, that's what you are. I only can be me based on what you taught me, Mom and Dad. I can be something different. If I've turned something different, you will be crying right now. You won't be here being so proud. He said, Yes, I know. And I questioned myself, is it the right thing to do? Because this world is difficult. I said, Dad, whatever come my way, if it's my destiny, it will be.
I mean, you speak, you sound kind of cocky about those, getting up on stage and, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. But were you scared? Were you worried? Like, I mean, you
No,
were young.
no, I was mad. That's
Mm,
simple. I've done nothing wrong to anybody. I just want to sing. Singing is not a crime. If singing is a crime, then we're all dead. So I'm like, well, who are those people anyway? Going through every member of my family in every different villages. I was playing the day before in Togo. By the time I arrived at the airport, my mom cried her eyes out. My dad, they were all stressed. And I'm like, Dad, Mom, just chill, man. Just don't do that to me. Because if you're not doing good, I can't perform on stage. Just let go. Let go. I'm fine. I'm going to be okay.
so album after album, I suspect, and success after success, your parents kind of got less worried and saw you perhaps the way the rest of the world sees you, I suppose.
They never stop being worried. You know any parents that never worried for their kids? Both of them are gone today.
Mm,
And one of the things that my mom used to say to me is that the only job you never retire from is being a parent.
yeah.
Even once you're 6 feet under. Because, I mean, having a child is a transformation in everything. Your priority changes. I have one daughter, and if something happened and I have to stop singing today to take care of her, I will do so.
I want to get into your advocacy and humanitarian work, and I think to tell that story, uh, we need to go back to 2002. I mean, your work around the well-being of women and girls in Africa, fighting female genital mutilation, fighting for equal access to education, the same access that boys have. Um, I want you to tell us how that work began, but the start of the story, as I know, really is in 2002, and you were invited by then Secretary General Kofi Annan at the UN to be part of a UN special session on children to perform, and you're in the audience getting ready to go up on stage, and not far away from you, just a few feet away, is the aforementioned Matthew Karikou, the former dictator. Um, so that's like in your orbit as you're getting ready to go on stage. Take the story from there and what that moment, what you were feeling, and what that ultimately led to with the United Nations.
Well, we made eye contact, and he looked at me and I looked at him. We recognized and acknowledged each other. But I was in a setting that he never expected me to be. So I didn't say anything to him, but I was determined when I saw him to let him understand that for us to be here on a special mission for children's rights should make him question why he became a dictator in Benin. What did the children of Benin done to him
Mm.
for him to be that person? And when I was asked after that to be a Goodwill UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, I said yes. Even though I know my career will always be my priority, that is also my priority. I grew up in Benin with parents that took good care of me, that sent me to school, that protected me. And when you are a leader of a country, when you are a leader of a country, your first job is to make sure that every citizen have a fair share and that they are protected above anything. That the sovereignty of a country is the well-being of the people. And you play with that, in my book, you are not a leader.
So, as a UN Goodwill Ambassador, what kind of things did you see? What kind of things did you do? And how did that ultimately kind of form your idea about what would become the Batonga Foundation?
I think that growing up with the parent that I grew up with, that reach out to everybody. Somebody need to go to hospital. My father is there. His car become an ambulance because we didn't have any. A woman was giving birth. I was 15. Next door, she was screaming, "No one come!" My mom left the kitchen. She was cooking for us and said, "Let's go." For the first time, I saw a woman delivering a baby. My mom telling you what to do, and because it was too late to take that person to the hospital. So for me, activism, I was fed with it. When some of my friends, when we finished primary school, didn't make it to secondary school because suddenly I realized when I met them in the street that they become mothers and we are the same age. It enraged the heck out of me. And I would go to my father and beg him, "Please help, please help." My father said, "I can't. It's a personal, private issue. If I've known before, I could have done some work educating the parents for them not to marry the kids off." And all this it was coming to my mind when I start working with UNICEF, and I'm like, how do we save the lives of young girls? In some places, in the northern part of my country, the girls can be married off at 8 years old to a man 50 years old until she become puberty kicking. And I start seeing the scope of the fight of my parents to protect their three daughters. Pressured my father to marry us at an early age. My father always saying, "My children are not merchandises, not my girls, not my boys." Tradition that could have harmed us, my father withstood against it and said, "Over my dead body. My duty as a father is to protect my kids. If they're grown up, they make a choice, it's their choice. But now, as kids, I make the choice for them. Any harmful thing will go away." So when I start working with UNICEF, it was painful to see children with HIV/AIDS. 3 years old, I was in an orphanage. The first trip I took with Carol Bellamy was in Tanzania. We went to deal with two things. People affected with goiter because the salt that they consume have no iodine in it. So we find a solution as an organization, instead of doing surgery, to find a tester for the salt. For the women to go to the market, we tell them if it doesn't turn purple, don't buy it. So what did it do? It saved lives and changed completely the way the merchant go and buy the salt, because the people that buy salt that was not selling their salt ask to have the same tester. So when they go and buy it, it changed the whole dynamic with a tester that cost less than $1.
Yeah.
And the second thing was I was sent to the orphanage of HIV/AIDS children. And I say, "I don't want to go." And they say, "You gotta go. The kids ask for you. They want you to come and sing Agolo for them." Marco, as I walked in, I couldn't. I couldn't. I was weeping so much from 3 years old all the way to teenage. And the place is crowded. And you have that little boy, so hot. So I don't know how many degree of fever he had. He just stuck to my skirt, won't let me go. And I grabbed him and sat. They prepared a chair for me. I couldn't even hug him, so hot he was. And I was crying. And he looked at me and he goes, "But why are you crying? We're waiting for you to sing." But I couldn't. So he jumped out of my lap, went to the other kids that were waiting for me, and they start singing, "Mutoto kwanza, oye, oye, mutoto." And I'm like, huh? It was so powerful.
Wow.
And I'm like, he came back and said, "You want to sing now?" I said, "What is that? What is that thing that you just did?" He said, he said, "It means children first." And I'm like, okay. And then he goes, "By the way, can I give you a message to the world?" I look at the kid, I'm like, "What you talking about?"
Wow.
And then he said to me, "Can you please tell the world that us children of this world should be the priority?" And I say, "Okay, I'll do that." And I tell him in return, "Will you allow me to use your chanting to write a song?" He said, "I cannot make that decision alone. Let me ask." And he went back to the kids and asked them. And they, blah, 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 they talk. And he came back and he said to me, yes, you can use your rallying cry, our rallying cry. But the song that you have to write have to be a joyful song.
Mm.
I said, that's a promise that I will keep. All those kids have AIDS. How can we justify a child that is just born to the world, done nothing wrong, that will live his whole life, if he survive, taking drugs? That's the beginning of seeing the scope of the challenge we have to face when we adult. We make the wrong decision politically or personally. There's always somebody that's gonna pay, and it's always our children.
So those experiences like that, really kind of sharpen the focus of what would become the Batonga Foundation. Um, I'm really curious to know. I mean, that's one example there when that young boy said, "Please, can you turn this into a song?" But I'm really curious how your immersion into this world of seeing like the ground truth of what's happening with kids around the globe, how that has impacted your music, just like in terms of content or the direction it's taken.
It's always in there because I realized that I wanted to help, but they helped me more because of the resilience of the children, of the young boy and the young girl. It is amazing to see. I came in with all my good heart, but they let me know that they're here to help me understand. And I never ever make any choice for anybody. That's what we did when we started Batonga. We wanted, because in one of those trips, mothers, I'm always speaking to mothers. I've been to places where a little girl had been raped, and then she never talk about it. And the whole support of the community just, I mean, the whole thing. And I have to bring people together to understand what happened because she told me. And I said, I can't tell your story. It's a secret you told me, but I want you to tell your father. I want you to tell your community for them to understand that you didn't drop out of school because you wanted to, because your stepfather was the one that raped you. So all these things are in my songs because I am always impacted by the power of music, especially when I met in Uganda a young child soldier. The conflict is over. They are closing, UNHCR is closing the camp down. Some kids are there, they have no more parents, they've been killed. And you have the social worker, the UNICEF staff, everybody's trying to get something out of them. The drawing is absolutely heartbreaking. But it's just like you're in front of a wall and no life. I mean, you're like, I'm a mother. And that child, I'm like, how can I make him smile? So I start singing a lullaby. Then suddenly you see the smile and you see the other the grass. They were waiting for this and they were party. I say, you come. They came to the party. They didn't participate, but at least something, music allowed me to break that barrier, to get to the people. I was in Kenya with UNICEF. 6 years of drought. Here we are back with Oxfam. Because what was going on, it started raining, pouring rain. And the rain will fall on the carcasses. People are so thirsty that they start drinking the water
Yeah.
of the carcasses. So it's full food. And then we just like, we have the hospital, the care with UNICEF, and Oxfam has the duty of burning all the carcasses, and we clean the water. In the middle of that, you have people coming from all around the place. People come from Somalia telling me to build a school. And I'm like, I can't build a school in your country if you cannot guarantee me that the young girl that comes to school will not go through female genital mutilation. Let's trade. That's how I argue. That's how I do diplomacy. You want me to help? You gotta help me too. I arrived in Kenya, we're talking about stunting. Stunting is an economical problem because when a mother is stunted, which means acute malnutrition of a mother and a baby, we have 24 months after the baby is born to help develop the brain. Once we lose that window, you will have an adult, 25 years old, working with a brain of a 9 years old.
Yeah.
You cannot have economy that grow in that. So here we are in the village where I've been going through roller coaster of emotion. The mother of a child that is stunted, she's stunted and 5 months pregnant. I mean, I'm telling you, Marco, this kind of thing I'm talking about, it's I'm telling you, I feel the pain in my body and everywhere. But the next village, we managed to reach out to them first. And you see the difference. When you start working with people, finding in their food what is needed, then we don't have to spend money can bring in stuff, but people are educated to understand what they can, women can eat when they're pregnant and their kids. And as I was walking in tears in that second village, the women start singing for me. Ah, ashe, 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 ah, blah, blah. And that's the song that is at the inside in the beginning of the album Eve. That's the first song. I said, these women, they go through hell. No one know their voice. Everybody talk about the African women. People put whatever they wanted. I've seen the beauty of them, the strength of them. I want them to sing for me. Then I went back to Benin and in many different villages. And that album is the voices of the women.
That was the part of the trilogy where you're in Brazil, correct?
No, that's way after that. Brazil done before. But this one is the one that I did before, I think, Once in a Lifetime, the album of the Talking Heads.
Right, 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 right. So, I mean, your ability to connect at that level on the ground is so impressive. But it strikes me the contrast. And the last time we spoke was last year, just as about you're about to receive the Polar Music Award, which actually recognizes this ability of yours to kind of be in these two worlds of the arts and humanitarian work. Um, we spoke just before that award was given out, and not long after you had performed at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And there was this great moment, and I asked you about it at the time, where you sang your song Mother Nature, and the lyrics partly go, "Don't ever let them hurt you. She has a way of warning us. Won't you listen?" And you're singing. Those are some of the lyrics, and you're there on stage singing before presidents and billionaires and prime ministers. And on this screen behind you is this mutating virus writhing around kind of abstractly, just a reminder of the pandemic that's still with us. So scene one, you're in Kenya, you're like meeting kids with HIV. Scene two, you're basically trying to communicate something to these world leaders. What were you feeling in that moment?
Well, I'm feeling a sense of urgency and at the same time, an opportunity not to be missed. I always say talk is cheap, action is expensive. We need to educate our leaders to understand that Davos is a bubble, and that bubble have to reach out to the people on the ground. You are not a leader in the vacuum. Every decision you make affect people, rich or poor. And music for me is the only way I know how to do. Because I know once you leave, you might not want it, what I say will stay in your brain. You act upon it, it's your choice. You don't act upon it, it's none of my business. At least I've told you what I want to do. I want you to do, not for me, but for everybody. The world is a big dystopia today because we have believed that people that we put in office will do right by us. But when we see how, the wrong they are doing, why do we stay quiet? Why can't we say we don't want this law? We don't want this policy. We can we voting for me is the most important and most precious thing ever in the world. And I said to people that say I don't want to vote, I say you don't vote, you don't come here and complain. Your life is good or bad, it's your problem. If you want something to change, you gotta vote. And when you vote, it's not over. When something is wrong, when you are witnessing injustice, something that is deeply wrong, and you don't speak up, you are part of the problem, not part of the solution. So that's why when I go to Davos, I am part of the board of arts initiative. That's what we do. Last year, what did we do? We talk about climate change. How do we talk about climate change? I've seen a documentary that explained to us why the Amazonian forest is so green year round. It's because the wind carried the sand from the Sahara Desert that is filled with nitrate. Nitrate, whatever it is, that goes, is all it's been going on for centuries. It always the same time, the same thing that allowed the Amazonian forest to be green, to be the length, one of the length of this earth. And I said during that show, I invited a young artist uh, from Brazil, and we did with chord and everything. And I said to the leaders, and we have Rafik Anadol from Turkey that went to the Amazonian forest to meet the indigenous people, went to Smithsonian to collect all animals and vegetal everything, and made a huge. It was music and collaboration of nature. That's the way I do things because I talk. The vision and the song speaks louder.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the kind of dystopian planet that we are living in. I mean, climate change and the way you address it in Mother Nature, obviously the big crisis of our age, uh, this existential late stage capitalism crisis. But whether it's that crisis or the crisis of democracy around the globe, or the crisis of education for women and girls. I mean, these are all stories that you know so well. I'm just curious to hear of your view on what the role of an artist should be in confronting a crisis.
I think that we have the ability because we absorb the thing differently than any regular person. I have to protect myself sometimes because I don't have filter. And if something is bad, it can destroy me in a fraction of a moment. And then once I realized that, I would say to myself, "You have a voice. You can sing. Get it out of your system and give it back." Not in a way to impede people's ability to move and to react, but to tell people, I always say this, the day you forgot that you have the power and the agency, you've lost everything. We can't lose that and we can't lose hope. So artists are the mirror that we give you to see the world in its differences and commonality at the same time. One thing that people keep on forgetting is that it's not our colors that matters. It's because we are part of nature. We are these atoms of nature as much as any plant and any animal. And if you forget that, then you start thinking that this climate change that we're talking about is not going to be for you. Nature don't discriminate. And therefore, for me, what is important is how we find a way to speak, still speak to one another, even in the era of internet. Because one thing that I would say I'm part of the failure of it, when you see something that is wrong and bad on internet, you fight it. Don't matter how many people that come after you. The truth is the truth. The truth cannot be sacrificed, cannot be compromised because you are afraid of somebody coming after you. And that is where the hatred and the hater won over us because we wanted to protect our comfort. There's no comfort when you have hatred around you
Mm.
because hatred creates violence. And when the violence started, no one is immune from it. Everybody gonna get their share of the violence that is percolating everywhere in the world. We've stayed silent too much. We need leaders to put more law to protect free speech. And if your free speech impact somebody's life, bullying the person, and there is death or any harm done, we need to be able to find the person have to pay. It cannot be impunity because we talk about free speech. You have the right to speak. My father always said it comes with responsibility and accountability. You want to be free to speak? Okay. But if your free speech infringe upon somebody else's freedom, then we have a problem. It's no longer your freedom anymore because your freedom stops when someone's freedom started. We are each other's keepers, and we have forgotten this for so long. We I remember vividly once I was in Geneva at a conference and we're talking about peace. And I was saying, for peace to exist, we need to protect the truth. We need that the truth that is the contract that we have with our leaders, with the system and the nature be protected at any cost. And somebody told me, but Angelique, you understand? You don't understand this. There's one point that you are missing. Peace don't generate profit. War do. And I say, okay, let me ask the question back to you. You make money doing war. And when nobody's there to buy any shit that you do anymore, where do you go? You need people. Money don't come from money. Somebody have to buy your stuff for you to be rich. And what you put it out there, if there's no one that want to come close to it, what do you do? And you might like the war. Are you gonna be the one that's gonna take the weapon and go die? Are you ready to die for money? He said, no, I'm not gonna go to the war zone. I said, what are you talking about? You're talking about something that is not really courageous. You telling me that me believing in peace, I'm naive. I would like to be I wanna be naive because I believe in the goodness in people. No one is born bad, no one is born good. We all go through this life through experiences that we learn. My father always used to say, you embrace your success as much as your failure. That's the only way you can be an adult, not blaming people for your failure, but blame yourself because you have something to do with your failure.
There have been so many threads through this conversation that kind of lead me back to this question. I want to end talking about your music, kind of where we began. I haven't wanted to really dwell on the art because I think your music, your art, kind of speaks for itself. So it's always like less than satisfactory to talk about music than actually hear it. But I do want to ask you about how you collaborate because it's been such kind of like a front looking part of what you do. It's not just so many artists that are like me, and you really put it out there. Whether we're going back to the first collaboration with like Carlos Santana and Youssou N'Dour, up to Philip Glass and Burna Boy. I mean, you just seem so open. And I want you to talk about why that is. It just feels like you just want to get people together and like to just like hang out and create something beautiful. Or is it something else? What do you get from working with other standouts in music?
I believe that there's no me without us. And music have shown me that. I've done project in the northern part in Norway with an orchestra, people from Bulgaria, Russia, America, all over the place. And we were in discussion to talk about set list, which song, and it was a chaos. And I'm like, stop, let's play the music. Once you start playing the music, it becomes obvious which song in which order you put it. Collaboration for me is pushing my boundaries, my self boundaries. My culture have taught me that I can go anywhere because I know where I come from. My culture will always be my savior. Will always be the key that open all the doors to go to other people's music store, music home. And I always learn something. I always sing differently when I'm doing collaboration. I'm me, but I'm also in the other person's life. We, I think that it comes from the fact that I grew up in a family of 10 kids, 7 boys and 3 girls. We need to make room for each other. We need to respect each other's space. Yet, when we come together to party or to eat or to do anything, it's done so quick because our brain is in tune. For me, music is the only language that we speak on this planet. Doesn't matter where we come from, those 12 notes of music, they create magic and it's stronger than anything else. And for me, it's an example of what we can do when we let go of fear, when we let go of division, when we let go of thinking that this person have to be my enemy for me to exist. If somebody, you have to hate somebody to exist, you have to question how much hatred you had for yourself. In music, I've learned every time I go on stage, as my mom used to tell me, before you set your foot on the stage, you have to be ready to be naked spiritually. Spiritually, the
Mm.
spirituality has no color, has no language. What touches me to cry will touch you to cry or act differently. You are never indifferent. You're always engaged with yourself, your culture, your heart, your guts, your fear, everything that you have. When I walk on stage, every time it's a new beginning for me. I never take any stage, any concert for granted, ever, because I don't know what's going to happen. I know I'm going to come on stage, but what's going to happen after is not in my hands. Is the connection that I create with the public. I give myself, and you give me something back. And for me, it's greater than any amount of money on this planet because I come out of stage filled up with hope, with love, with strength. Because in front of me, I see the diversity of this planet. I see people from different color, different culture, different language, different faith. Music brings all of us together in one place. If music can do that, let's use it more as a weapon of peace.
Yeah, and having been at any number of concerts of yours, what you get from the audience, I see the audience picking up from you as they're streaming out that joy. I mean, people are pumped. Angélique Kidjo, it is always terrific to speak with you. I always learn something new. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Akbe kakalo. And until the next time,
You so much, Marco. It's always good to speak to you too.
you be well.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.